Recently achieved her PhD, so she is now Dr. Macarena. Congratulations again. Do you want to share 2 words before you start about your PhD, before you launch into your presentation?
Yeah, well,
thanks, Macarena.
Thank you. Well, my PhD is not related to the topic that I'm gonna share with you today. So in my thesis, what I research is language attitude and language ideologies in teachers, because what I wanted to know is whether a teacher have an impression of people in general about the way they speak. So in the Spanish speaking world, we got different accent, different regional accent. So by the way that we speak, we are socially categorized, and I wanted to know if this stereotype was something that teachers have when they teach Spanish, because my impression is that if they do that, if they hold all these stereotypes, they will pass it on to students. So what I did was to research that, and some of the stereotypes were there because they have there is a long tradition of the Spanish spoken in Spain as the norm, as the standard norm in the Spanish-speaking world. And so my research found out that we have to work a lot, and we have to train teachers, we have to make them aware that these stereotypes still exist, and also to make them aware that they have to be very careful when teaching Spanish, so they don't transmit this stereotype to students. So that was my research about, more or less. What I would like to share today with you is more in my teaching interest, the pedagogy side of my interest. It's a very simple teaching tip. Perhaps some of you already use it with your students. And as she has introduced me, Caroline, sorry. The topic is using images and cartoons to engage students in discussions. As some of you know, this year we have introduced a new curriculum in the Spanish and Latin American department. Then this new curriculum put culture in the center, so it's like the focus, and then we see language as a vehicle to teach and to make students understand political, social, cultural issues related to Spanish and Latin America. So there has been a shift in the way that we understand the teaching. So language and culture are fully embedded in the curriculum, and this curriculum totally integrate language and culture. So this new change has presented some challenges for students, particularly in relation to text, because they have been presented with texts which are more challenging than the ones that they used to read before. Because the main point of the text in the old curriculum, the main purpose was just to reinforce the linguistic aspect, the linguistic component, and the culture was more like secondary component and very superficially touched upon. So I noticed that a student, when they have to read a text and when they have to engage in discussion, they struggle. So I thought, what can I do to make them, to facilitate the discussion? So I thought about introducing images and cartoons in a way to help them to engage in discussion. So this is the topic of my, it's not really my talk, but it's more like a talk what I would like to share with you what I did in my class. So why did I think that this tip or this strategy could work? First, because of the emerging of mobile technologies and online social networks. For example, all of you know that the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. So because of this new technology and social network, students are continuously surrounded by media, by visual media. So they are used to access to information in writing and also visually. And therefore, this strategy, I think it's accommodate really well to the learning style of the so-called digital native, like, this, I just brought this cartoon as an example. So that was the rationale behind that. Why does it work using, or why in my case, it worked to use images? First, because as we know, images and photographs implicitly convey a narrative, and this is a great tool to trigger group discussion. Also, images are able to elicit student knowledge, explain difficult concepts, and promote visual analysis. Obviously, they catch very immediately and very easily student attention. And also, they create a very relaxed environment because they can freely talk about whatever they want to, whatever ideas come to their minds. And all these promote participation and interaction. Also, when they have to interpret the images, they form opinions, they make judgment about the concept and the issues related to the readings. And last but not least, there's an excellent pedagogical tool for visual learning. So it's a way also to integrate different learning styles. So I'm just going to show you two examples taken from SPAN 2611, which is offered in semester 1, and SPAN 2612, which is offered in semester 2. But before, I'm just going to briefly explain the method. So as I mentioned, we have a new curriculum, and we got 3 hours of class per week. So one session of 2 hours, and then another one session of 1 hour. The first hour of the 2-hour session is always devoted to discussion, to discuss a cultural text. And we decided within the department to create like reading guides to help students to better understand the text and the most important ideas and concepts. I normally provide students with questions just to guide them through the reading, and I make them available on Canvas the week before we have to discuss this topic in class. So the method is always the same. So at the beginning of the class, I show a student like some picture. Sometimes there are images, picture, or cartoons. It depends, but always they are related to the topic of the reading. I ask them to work in groups, 3 or 4, no more than 3 or 4 groups, and they just talk freely about the ideas and the representation that all the images evoke. They work for around 15 minutes, and then the discussion opens up to the whole class, and we explore commonalities, differences, and other ideas. And then once we have done that, students, they are equipped with their own ideas. They understand better the ideas and the main aspect of the text, because I also go around and they just facilitate the understanding. If they have some question with vocabulary or with concept that they don't really understand, I facilitate that and I explain to them. So after that, they are more, as I said, they're more armed with their own ideas, and we move on to the questions. So this is always the same method that I follow. And I'm going to show you some very particular examples now. So for example, for SPAN 2611, in week 6, the topic for the text was gender stereotype in las telenovelas. So they have to read a text about that. This was the pre-self-study reading guide, the question that they have to prepare before class. So before moving on to all these questions, I show them this picture. And I say, okay, just work in groups, what this image evoke? What ideas do you think we can mention? And also in relation, in connection with the reading. That was the thing. And also, I asked them to think about adjectives that are normally used to describe stereotypical views of gender. Like, for example, strong, emotional, dependent, independent, brave, fragile. So at the same time, we were using culture and language, because they have to they have to think about adjective to describe this type of stereotypical views. So once we discuss this, then we move into the question. So it was for me, I could, because at the beginning, when we started, I didn't use this strategy, and I noticed that a student struggled, but after using this, a student engaged more in the discussion, because we have already discussed some ideas, and they have more ideas, and they have more things to say about the questions. So that was an example for Espantosis 1.1. And then for Espantosis 1.2, in week 5, we discussed about Bolivia water war, and they have to read again a text about all the demonstration and the protests that happened in Cochabamba in 1999 and between 1999 and 2000, in response to the privatization of the water. So they have to read the text, but before that, these were the questions that they have to prepare before class. And again, before this, before just moving and discussing this question, I showed them this picture, where they have again to think, okay, well, how can you relate and connect all these images with the text? It doesn't. You can see here there is the cartoon is in English, but I don't think at that stage it's really important that. The point is that they have to think about what is the connection between this and the text, and so they have to discuss around these images. And then, as I said, they work for 15 minutes, and then once they have discussed in small groups, we move on to the questions themselves. Okay? So, but by doing this, by using all these images and cartoons, I've noticed a big change in my students, and I think they are more confident to talk and to express their views. And I think it's a better way to get the student made a more productive use of the reading, and also to engage more critically with text. In my case, as I said, it has worked quite well, and if you haven't tried, I hope you find it easy and you give it a go. And that's it. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Macarena before we move on to our next speaker? Thanks, Nesreen.
Thanks for that. This is amazing. This is a second-year student done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So usually the cartoons, given the nature of being either satire or really subtle, deep in political, how did they find the language, or how did you help them find the language to express the loaded meanings of cartoons?
What we normally do is that I say keep it very simple.
Okay.
So students sometimes, that's something that that happened in the first semester, and it has changed over the second semester. They try to go to internet and copy things that they didn't understand. So I said, well, that's not the point. So the vocabulary is not really difficult, because we try to, sometimes I modify some words that I think they are going to be very difficult for them. But when I say, okay, what did you write for this answer? Students say something, and I say, well, forget about that. How would you express this with the resources that you've got at the moment? So we always keep it very simple and say, well, if they, for example, use very specific word, I make sure that they understand, and I say, okay, what does it mean, this? Do you know what this word means? What is the meaning? How can you explain this with other words? So I always make students to make sure that they understand what they write. And it's exactly the same with grammar, because at the beginning, obviously it's difficult because the cognitive age is much higher than what they are able to express with the language that they know at the moment. So they want to say things that they are not ready to say. So I always say, okay, this is great, but this is not your level. I don't want you to go and copy things or use Google Translator for that. Just try at the beginning, we use it as a whole class. Let's try to put the same idea with the language, with the grammar that you know. And then just guide them step by step. And I've seen a really big change from since the first semester, because the first semester students tend to write like very complex sentences without really understanding what was going on. But now in the second semester they manage, and they keep, their level has increased a lot because the vocabulary is more sophisticated. You can see that in some of the assessment. If you compare the assessment, they have a written reflection to do. So if you compare the written reflection of previous year with this year, the level is much higher because they have more precise vocabulary. The ideas are more depth and more deeper than before, because also the topics are a bit different. Because at the beginning, with the old curriculum, sometimes we talk about daily things like furniture, houses, and stuff like this. But this year we're talking about gender stereotype, political issues like the one in Bolivia. So they have to, you know, it needs more work from the students in compared with last year. But they appreciate a lot, and some of them, they told me that they have learned a lot, because they say, I just realized that by reading you learn a lot and you improve your Spanish a lot, because that's a good way. So the student feel forced, they have to read text every week. It's like 500 words long. So they get used to that. At the beginning, some of them they were reluctant and say, well, it's difficult, it's too challenging. But now I think they got it, and they say they can see the benefit of doing that, and they really appreciate. And they told me that they can see that their Spanish has improved because of the reading, because they have to read a lot as well.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much.